You already know something is off. Maybe you've been sitting across from someone you love, and it feels like you're talking to a stranger. Maybe the conversations are surface level now, polite but empty, like two people just coexisting in the same space. And you keep wondering, when did this happen? When did we stop actually talking to each other? That feeling is one of the most quietly painful things a human being can experience. Not a dramatic fight, not a big blow-up, just this slow, creeping silence that grows between two people who used to mean everything to each other. And here's the part that nobody talks about. It's not usually one giant moment that breaks connection. It's the small daily habits that either build it or destroy it. The way you respond when they start talking. The way you look at your phone during dinner. The way you say "I'm fine" when you're not. These tiny moments, happening day after day, are either pulling you closer or pushing you further apart. And if you've been feeling the distance, if you've been wondering why your conversations feel like they're going nowhere, then what you're about to hear is going to change how you see every single interaction you have. Because emotional connection is not built in grand gestures, it's built in ordinary moments done right. Now, before we go further, I want to be honest with you. The habits I'm going to walk you through today have helped real people go from feeling completely disconnected, going days without a real conversation, feeling unseen and unheard, to rebuilding something they thought was gone forever. And if you want to go deeper than what we cover here today, we have a program linked down below in the video description that goes much further into transforming your relationship communication from the ground up. But I'll come back to that. Right now, let me give you what you actually came here for. The first habit sounds almost embarrassingly simple, but most people are doing the opposite of it without even realizing it. It's called full presence, not partial attention, full presence. Think about the last real conversation you had. Were you actually there, or were you half thinking about your to-do list, half watching the TV in the background, half mentally planning your response before the other person even finished their sentence? That's not a conversation. That's two people performing the idea of a conversation while both feeling deeply alone. Full presence means putting down everything, physically and mentally, and choosing to actually be in that moment with that person. No multitasking, no fixing, no advising, no waiting to respond, just genuinely receiving what they're saying. When someone feels truly heard, not just listened to but actually heard, something in them opens. The walls come down. And that is when connection begins to happen. Most people underestimate how powerful this is because they've never actually experienced it consistently. Studies on relational satisfaction consistently show that feeling understood is the single most powerful predictor of connection in any relationship. Not how much time you spend together, not how many romantic gestures you make, feeling understood. And you don't need to be a therapist to give someone that gift. You just have to be present. The second habit is what I call reflective responding, and this is where things get fascinating. Because most of us were taught to respond with facts or opinions or solutions. But emotional connection doesn't come from being right. It comes from being resonant. When someone shares something with you and you immediately jump to fixing it, you've accidentally sent a message that says their feeling is a problem to be solved. And even if you meant it with love, they feel dismissed. They start editing what they share with you. They start giving you the surface version of themselves because they've learned that the deeper version doesn't get the response they need. Reflective responding is different. It means before you offer any solution, any advice, any perspective, you mirror back what you heard. You name the emotion. You acknowledge the weight of it. You let them know that what they shared landed with you. This one shift alone, this single habit change, people report that within days of doing this consistently, their partner started opening up in ways they hadn't in years. Friendships that had gone cold started warming again. Family relationships that felt transactional started feeling real. Not because the problems disappeared, but because the person finally felt like they weren't going through it alone. That is the power of being emotionally responsive instead of just logically reactive. Now here's a dramatic truth that most people aren't ready to hear. The conversations you're avoiding are exactly the ones that could save your relationship. The topic you keep sidestepping. The thing you say it's not a big deal about. The feeling you've swallowed for the 100th time because you don't want to rock the boat. Avoidance feels like protection. It feels like you're keeping the peace. But what avoidance actually does is build a wall brick by brick until one day you look at the person you love and realize you haven't actually touched the real parts of each other in a long, long time. The third habit is what I call intentional vulnerability. And I want to be clear, this is not about dumping every emotion on someone or having uncomfortable conversations constantly. Intentional vulnerability is the deliberate, thoughtful choice to share something true about yourself. Something you actually feel, something you actually fear, something you actually want, in a way that invites closeness rather than distance. Vulnerability is the access point to intimacy. There is no other way in. You cannot connect with someone's performance of themselves. You can only connect with who they actually are. And they can only connect with who you actually are, not the edited version, not the version that has it all together. The real version. When you go first, when you take the risk of being real, something extraordinary happens. The other person relaxes. They feel permission to stop performing too. And suddenly you're both actually there, actually talking, actually connecting. People who practice this consistently report feeling closer to their loved ones within weeks than they had felt in years. That's not a small thing. That's years of distance dissolved in weeks, simply by changing how they showed up in everyday conversations. The fourth habit will seem counterintuitive. It's learning to pause before you react. Because in moments of emotional tension, which are unavoidable in any real relationship, your nervous system wants to fire back fast. It wants to defend, to correct, to shut down. And in those split seconds, your brain is not making rational decisions. It's making survival decisions. And survival decisions destroy connection. The pause, even 2 or 3 seconds of intentional breathing before you respond, creates a gap between stimulus and reaction. In that gap is where your best self lives. In that gap is where empathy becomes possible, where understanding becomes possible, where repair becomes possible instead of escalation. This is not weakness. This is one of the most advanced emotional skills a human being can develop. And the research on it is staggering. Couples who practice deliberate pausing in conflict report resolving disagreements in a fraction of the time compared to those who don't. And more importantly, they report feeling safe with each other. Not just after the conflict, but during it. Because they trust that the conversation won't become a war zone. When you feel safe with someone, you stay open. When you stay open, connection survives even the hard moments. The fifth habit is the one that ties everything together. It's called daily emotional check-ins, and it does not need to be elaborate or time-consuming. We're talking about 5 minutes deliberately set aside, where you ask each other something real. Not how was your day, not fine, actually real. What made you feel good today? What's been weighing on you? What do you need right now that you haven't been getting? These questions sound small, but they create a daily ritual of emotional access. They tell your relationship that it is a priority, not just something that happens when you happen to have time. People who implement this one habit alone, just 5 minutes of intentional emotional check-in every single day, report measurable shifts in relational satisfaction within 30 days. Not years. 30 days. Because connection is cumulative. Every small moment of genuine contact stacks on top of the last one, and eventually the distance closes. The silence breaks, and you find your way back to each other. Now I want to pause here because I know some of you are watching this and thinking, this sounds good, but my situation is different. It's been too long, the damage is too deep, we've drifted too far apart, and I understand why you feel that way. But I want to challenge that thought directly. The people who have had the most dramatic transformations in their relationships are not the ones who had the easiest starting point. They're the ones who decided to start anyway, even when it felt too late, even when they weren't sure it would work. The decision to try, backed by the right tools, is what changes everything. And that brings me back to something I mentioned earlier. If you're watching this, and you know that what's at stake is too important to leave to chance, if you know that you need more than just a few tips and you're ready to actually rebuild your emotional connection with a proven structured approach, then the program linked down below in the video description was built for exactly where you are right now. Most people won't click that link. Most people will keep watching videos and feeling temporarily hopeful and then going back to the same patterns because they never actually committed to changing them. And that's okay. That path is available to everyone. But you wouldn't still be here watching this if you were okay with how things have been. You're here because you feel the cost of disconnection, and you want it to end. The habits we talked about today are real and they work. Full presence, reflective responding, intentional vulnerability, the deliberate pause, daily emotional check-ins. Each one by itself will move the needle. All of them together, practiced consistently, will transform the way people experience you and the way you experience your relationships entirely. But if you want the deeper work, the real structural shift, not just better conversations but a completely rebuilt foundation for emotional connection, then don't walk past that link. The people who are actually ready to change their relationships don't wait for the perfect moment. They make the moment perfect by deciding today is when it starts.